a whole range of possibilities in between. This is you don't have to go crazy like that. Okay, and by the way, I highly encourage hams to get involved in field day. Not just because I started this way, but because it's a great way to share our organizational skills with others, and a great way to help other ham clubs, small ones that maybe aren't contest oriented, to improve their organization of their own field days and the success of their field days and the quality of the experience that people have that attend and participate in those field days. So I encourage everybody to participate in field day. It is a wonderful event. Right now I'm a member of the Potomac Valley Radio Club. We have about 1,000 members, and we're going to be doing field day this year as W1AW Stroke 3. And there's another guy in this room that's going to be doing field day as W1AW Stroke 9. That's going to be fun. We'll see how that goes. But we're going to have 28 transmitters. How many are you going to have, Craig? 29. Hey, that's great. Let me know how that goes. I think the record is 51. We did that foolishly once. 51 transmitters. Can you imagine that? I hope we don't do it again. That was then. Okay. So there are, as we all know, ham radio itself is an extremely diverse hobby. Contesting is a specialty that we all love and enjoy within this diverse hobby. Contesting is incredibly diverse. And multi-op contesting itself, which is a specialty within contesting, is in itself extremely. Radio contests, as computers have replaced Model 28 oil and gear machines, has really exploded, and the contest programs, the software to support it has gotten much better. So you can do multi-op as field day, by far the most popular. You can do it on HF from the United States. You can go overseas and do it. Very different approach to those. Maybe you like to operate from home, single op. Well, you can join a group and do VHF, UHF from a fixed station or maybe on a mountaintop. And within these categories, you can do it as a small multi-single with a friend, very casual, or maybe have 2 transmitters on the air. This kind of an effort probably isn't intended to be super competitive. It's probably casual. Or get a little more serious in any of the 3 categories: multi-single, 2 transmitter, or multiple transmitter. Or you could try to outdo that and see how you do. And casual, probably most folks are either in the casual category or the competitive ones. Top 10 finisher is it's a reasonable goal. I think a lot of teams that decide they want to do this can achieve it. It probably doesn't take a lot. This is a whole different matter. In all of those categories, the top 3 tends to be the same guys over and over, without a whole lot of change. And the reason is single operator, multi-operator starts with a lot of planning, particularly when you get started. You just don't invite some friends over and sit them in front of the radio and figure out what you're going to do from there normally, unless it's very casual. So you want to start well in advance. Deciding which contest and which category to enter is very key. You might talk to some people who've done it. Maybe you've operated in a multi-op with someone else, and it gives you an idea as to what you'd like to do. Most people start multi-single. And then the question becomes, okay, is it going to be one transmitter and we just swap operators in and out, or am I going to have a couple of transmitters available and switch between those? How serious are you going to be? And there's nothing wrong about not being very serious. It's perfectly okay. There's a whole range of people with all kinds of, just like in field day, there's crazy groups like W1AW Stroke 3 with 28 transmitters, all the way down to people operating in the single transmitter, battery powered, and there's everything in between. So decide which category you're going to be in and how competitive you want to be. Is it going to be more of a social event, which is fine, or is it going to be more of trying to break into the top 3, which is really hard? Something about operators. It is really hard to integrate part-time operators into a multi-operator event. It's really difficult. So you really need to give that a lot of thought as to how the operators who are more bought into the operation are going to react to someone who comes in for a few hours and maybe expects to get a prime assignment, even though they're only there for a few hours. So from a teamwork point of view, from a team performance point of view, you have to give really careful thought to how you integrate part-timers into that competitive effort. I generally advise against doing it. It can cause more problems than it solves. But you may have a problem you're trying to solve, like maybe your prime guy has an obligation to his family that he has to meet on Sunday morning from 10 a.m. until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you have to find someone to fill that gap, well, that's okay. But if you're going to take a full-time guy and ask him, well, during the prime run time on 10 meters, I'm going to have to put you aside and take this part-time guy and sit him there for 3 hours, that's going to destroy your team. So this is something to be real careful about as part-time operators, and how you're going to manage how the team is going to respond to that. Operator band assignments and schedules. Different operators have different preferences. And usually teams do best when the operators are doing the things that they like to do best. So if you've got someone who really likes 160 meters or 80 meters and really doesn't like operating on 20 meters sideband in the middle of Kilowatt Alley, well, you have to take that into consideration. If you put that guy on 14.151 at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, he's probably going to be a real unhappy camper. But on the other hand, if you take a guy who loves running and you put him on 160 meters at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's going to be real unhappy too. So when you think about operator assignments, you have to know the people. And if you don't know them, ask them. And I find it real easy to do that by email. If you've got someone who's going to join your operation for the first time, send them an email and say, okay, what contests have you operated? What bands do you prefer? What's been your success? What have you achieved? Get to know those things so you can figure out how to integrate a new person into the team. And just like any other team, a living and successful team always has members that are joining the team, and inevitably always have members who, for their own reasons, are choosing to leave. So like any other successful team, you've got people who are new, you've got people who have been there for years and love it, and you've got people that are starting to get other interests and aren't so active in it anymore. So a team is also about sustaining the team, not just for this contest, but maybe for many contests. And the other thing is, in planning for a multi-op, is at this point now you know your operators, and it's probably your station, and you know your station well. So it's important to match the capabilities of the operator and the station very well. If you have a barefoot let's say, Kenwood TS 940 from 20 years ago and a tri-bander at 30 feet and some wires, you probably don't want to invite some of the best contesters in your area to join your multi-op. You want balance between the capabilities of the station and the people that are there. Now, if you really aspire to bringing some of the best people in your area to join your station, maybe you need to invest in some improvements so that there's a good match between the capability of your station and the capabilities of the people that are there. Keep in mind also, people are capable of surprisingly good improvements. So if you match people who are motivated to improve with other experienced members of your crew, those people in the course of one contest can go from kind of pretty good contesters to really good contests in the space of a weekend. So that's something else to consider. This is all organizational stuff. This is all people stuff. It tends not to be so much about equipment, except for this one of matching your station capabilities to the capabilities of your team. It's very important to introduce new members of the team. Someone has to be the leader of that team. It's usually the station owner, although not always. There are some very excellent examples of the team leaders who are not station owners. You don't want to sit someone in front of your station for the first time at the beginning of the contest and have him have no idea as to how to operate the station or what the things are that work. He should know what the strengths of the station are. He should know what the weaknesses are. He should know any oddities before the contest begins. So you should have a training session, even if only for an hour before the contest begins. Creature comforts and safety. You have to think about all this. Some multi-operator stations have all their people commute from home and spend just their operating time there. Others have accommodations for sleeping. I don't recommend that you share those accommodations with your family. That can get pretty tough. For most families, it's hard to have a bunch of strange people come into the house and live in the house for a weekend and then go away. There's a pretty good chance you won't do that very many times. So give some careful thought as to how, if your partner was having some activity for the weekend and you were the other member of the family, and how you would react. Thinking about that is really important. And of course, people need food and restrooms and usually a shower, and there should be fire extinguishers, and the people should know where they are and how to use them. And there should be safe exits. Certainly, any ham shack where there are more than one operator there should have at least two ways to get out of that ham shack if they have to. One is probably the main door, and the other one a window or something else, so people can escape if the worst should happen. Again, getting back to family stuff, your family, despite all this activity in a multi-op contest, probably still expects their normal privacy. So the operators that come there have to know that they're expected to respect the family's privacy, and I'm sure your family members don't want to have all of their normal activities totally disrupted by your contest. So when you're thinking about this, you've got to give some serious consideration to this, or this might be your first and last multi-op contest. Now, getting over to technical stuff, it's a good idea to have a checklist. You prepare in advance of everything that needs to be there to support this thing you're planning to do. The software that you need to run the contest, make sure everyone is familiar at an appropriate level with how to run that software. All of the antennas in your station should be checked out beforehand to make sure they're all working as expected. Equipment should be checked out. So, and in today's world, a modern checklist is probably on your computer and maintained, and of course you get to keep ones from previous contests that way too. Okay, let's move on to the team itself. Boy, this sounds like a management course. Well, it is. It is. We're bringing people in and expect them to be successful. So somebody is the leader of that team, and that person needs to know that they're the leader. it's not you. And if you're the station owner and the other guy's the leader, you and he ought to have a discussion as to what leadership means, so that you don't get to the end of this contest as the station owner and say, "Boy, you were the leader and you did a crummy job. I thought you were going to do better." So there ought to be some serious discussion about what leadership means for this activity at the level of participation you're going to engender, and what kind of planning needs to be performed so that the whole activity is successful. Any technical team, any multi-op team is going to need some technically oriented people. It might only be one person. Chances are it's going to be more than one. So you think about what contesting has evolved into today. It's computers, it's computer networks inside the station. In a multi-op environment, almost always integrated into spotting networks outside the station, maybe integrated into CW skimmer, plus antennas of all kinds of equipment, and all this integrated together as a integrated activity. Lots of technical stuff going on here, and an expectation that whatever goes wrong is going to get fixed quickly. People get unhappy if you've got 4 people in there for the weekend and the software breaks and nobody knows how to fix it. That's bad. So it's very important in thinking about this to think about the skills that you need present on the site to be sure that the team doesn't fail because of lack of planning or lack of the right skills on the team. And those skills need to cover every detail of the transceivers and amplifiers and computers and software and networks, antennas, and if someone needs to climb antennas, the safety associated with that. If something happens, someone needs to climb a tower on a contest weekend, that can be a real dangerous thing to do. Pretty good chance that some RFI might pop up, particularly if you're doing a multi-op for the first time. There's a pretty good chance you'll run into some interference problems between stations for the first time. And having some people on the team who have maybe done this before be a good idea to have someone like that. But most importantly, you need people who can think quickly and not panic, and especially not do anything dangerous. Many multi-op teams are blessed with operators who are very highly skilled. They've either come into the team already having very high skills, or after joining the team, they have developed very high skill levels. And it's important for you as the leader of the team to know who those people are, so that you don't misuse their very strong talents on your team. And the other members of the team will know who they are too, and they'll be disappointed if the really high-performing members of your team don't have an opportunity to contribute to the performance of the team overall. Usually, a highly effective team in a multi-op environment is looking at the performance of the team more than they are the performance of the individuals. So one of the roles as the leader of the team is to be sure that these people are appropriately placed on the right bands, so that their skills are best used. And highly skilled includes not only this, but like on 160 meters with the strange propagation that occurs there, there's a whole set of unique skills on that band. There's a whole bunch of unique skills associated with knowing where the higher bands are open at which part of the day. 20 meters can be open in all kinds of crazy directions during the middle of the night. So there are lots of specialized skills, and it's important that the leadership of the team know what those skills are and which people have those skills. One other very important capability on a multi-op team is the tactician. And that's another very specialized team. It's someone who knows all the rules of the contest in depth. Some of the rules are subtle. For example, the multi-single rules in CQ Worldwide. The band changing rules in some of the contests. The rules for what you can do in terms of communicating with other stations through the packet networks and all this stuff. So there needs to be at least one person on the team who understands the details of what's allowed and what's not, what's ethical and what's not, and that can make tactical operating decisions. Should I have my most capable station on 20-meter phone or 80-meter phone now? Should I be hunting multipliers now, or should I be trying to run? And you need tacticians who know that, who can make decisions for the station as to what bands to be on. And you also need propagation expertise on the team. And that's usually gained by people who are active on the air regularly. It's not so. Yes, there's software to do that, but believe me, the guys who are active regularly have far better knowledge of propagation than the ones who might call up a software prediction program and produce reams of paper and tell you how to switch bands based upon propagation forecasts. Really skilled people is a better way. Station equipment, again, I'll say that the most important thing is the capabilities of the operators, and the equipment should be well matched. If you're blessed with really good operators, then you need to make some investments in a really good station. In any multi-op contest these days, computers are involved in it. Other than the most basic multi-single, it's probably networked computers. So you need to have some people who know how to do this for you. You're probably going to connect at least to an external DX cluster such as VE7CC, and maybe a CW skimmer for a CW contest. Highly recommended, the reverse beacon network. But all of this comes with difficulties. So you want well before the contest, you want to solve all the problems associated with computers, networks, and integrating with the external data sources that you'd like to use. Nobody likes to come to your QTH and your multi-op station, set down their radio, turn it on, and have it get destroyed. That's a real bummer. And the most likely way that a radio is going to get, a modern radio, the most likely damage is going to be from excessively strong signals coming into the receiver input of that transceiver. What I do in my station is that every receiver and every transceiver in the station, or that anyone brings in, the very first thing we do is put bandpass filters in the input to the receiver, so that no signals from any other band can get into it. So in the planning of your station, it's important to respect people who might bring their equipment in, and to be sure that it's not going to get damaged either this way or any other way. Multi-op always has to contend with this RFI problem. And RFI gets generated in lots of ways. The most basic way is excessive signal level, where maybe no filtering or inadequate filtering has been placed in front of the equipment to protect it from extremely strong signals on other bands. That's easy to protect against with filters. But there are other more difficult RFI sources to fix other than excessive signal strength. So this one is excessive signals from other bands, easily solved with filters. The other one is called RF flooding. And here's what that is. Well, first of all, I'll describe the symptom of it. If you've got two stations on CW, and normally this is a problem associated with CW contests rather than sideband contests. Why is that? The second and third harmonics of the single sideband contests are relatively high in the band, and the second harmonic, let's say if you have a transmit on 3800, second harmonic's at 7600. So that's not going to bother the 40-meter phone transmitter. Likewise, the 40-meter phone transmitter is likely to be around 7.2. Second harmonic of that is up at 14.4. Not likely to be a big problem. But on CW, it's a whole different matter. Everybody likes to be down near the bottom edge of the band, and all those harmonics fall into the bands for the other higher CW bands. And the symptom of that is, if those harmonics have a broad band, if if you tune away from the harmonic and you hear this noise, it sounds like AC hum, is being keyed. So let's say you have a 40 meter station on 7002, and you tune to 14004, and of course you're going to hear the harmonic. You tune to 14006, a little bit higher, and you hear this buzz that's being keyed with the harmonic. That buzz is created by RF flooding. And what that is the very strong signal from 40 meters in this case. You've got 1500 watts output on 40 meters, and it's getting into all of the wiring in your house, in your ham shack, in all the neighboring buildings. It might be a workshop, in your neighbor's house, for thousands of feet around. And any electronics, especially switching power supplies and computers and network routers, any of those devices are candidates for taking in energy that was picked up by the wiring feeding those devices, mixing with the electronics, and then re-radiating the second harmonic with all of this crud modulation on top of it. And unfortunately, the only way to find this stuff is a pretty intensive detective job. The easiest way, if you suspect it's a neighbor, is to convince the neighbor to shut off the main breaker to their home. And you'll quickly determine whether the noise is coming from that neighbor's house or not. Well, chances are that's going to be a pretty friendly neighbor that's going to allow you to do that. I have a friendly neighbor like that, and we have solved RFI that way. But this is a big problem for multi-op stations, is RF flooding, particularly at CW contests. And it's not uncommon to find the source in your own house. Some of the worst violators are these little switching power supplies for iPads and laptops and iPhone and telephones these days. They are an intense source of this RF flooding problem in multi-op stations. For the more intensely competitive activities, it's in both the multi-2 and especially the multi-multi category, you're not allowed to have two signals on the band at the same time. And it is absolutely essential. You're going to follow the rules. You're going to be ethical. It's absolutely essential to have a lockout so that you cannot violate the rules unintentionally or, gee, I didn't really mean to do that, but I didn't think it was important to follow the rules that closely. It's really important to have a lockout. So, for example, if you're doing multi-single, where you've got two transmitters, so the two operators can switch transmitters, it's important to make sure that those transmitters cannot possibly come on the air at the same time. Similarly, in a multi-multi, if you've got two stations set up on 20 meters, they must be locked out so they cannot transmit at the same time. Another capability, and this only applies to the more advanced multi-multi stations, is the ability, if you have two stations on the same band, of the search and pounce station to be able to listen at the same time that the running station is on the air. That involves usually separate receiving antennas that are located hundreds, if not 1,000 feet away. Towers and antennas. There's a wide range of capabilities here, and I've just to give you an idea from the most basic multi-single, one small tower with a tri-bander and some dipoles, that's adequate for a multi-single station. You're probably not going to break into the top 10 with a station like this, but it's very capable. You can have a lot of fun with a basic station like this, with a couple of operators, appropriate planning in advance, expectations set at a reasonable level, and there's plenty of opportunity to improve. I started that way, and I wound up down here. But there's plenty of opportunity to improve. Tri-banders present a lot of problems as you get more sophisticated, so it's a good idea in a multi-op station to go to monoband antennas if you can, to get better antennas for the lower bands. As you get very competitive in the multi-single category, or try to be competitive in multi-2, a two-tower station is quite adequate. You don't need anything more than 70 or 80 feet to compete reasonably well in this category. And if you really want to be competitive in the bigger categories, of course, inevitably it involves much more sophisticated stuff. Field day. By far the most, yes. More than once. The question is, if you've got a really complicated transceiver, well, let me take it even further. Not only that, you've got really complicated antenna switching that nobody can possibly understand. What do I do? Well, what I did in the first case, I had some operators that owned 10-tech Orions. 10-tech Orions are impossible for anybody to understand except for the owner. So here's what I did. I banned them from my station. Didn't allow them. The owners of 10-tech Orions were not allowed to bring them to my station. Because what I found, I mean, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. If you looked at if that operator was not sitting there in front of his 10-tech Orion, guess who was sitting in front of it? Nobody. Nobody wanted to touch it. Because the two guys who brought those in both had them so highly customized to their preferences that nobody could stand it. And nobody knew which dials to turn or anything else. So it was very simple. They weren't allowed in the station anymore, period. But the other popular transceivers like the Elecraft K3, all of the Azus that I know of, all the Kenwoods, a little bit of training and at least the basic functions are well understood. The other common flaw is antenna switching that people can understand. The more antennas you get, the more complicated it is to figure out how to do the switching. And this especially gets to be a problem when you've got a very large number of antennas and maybe just a few transmitters to try to switch those in between. It's a real mess. So in designing such a system, you start off by thinking about, okay, how is every operator going to understand how this system works? And you start with that as a premise, and then you design the switching system. Not the other way around of how do I design this switching system to provide all the flexibility you could possibly ever have under any circumstance, and then having no operator in the world figuring out how to be able to use it. That's a non-starter. So you have to always think about the people side of things and then design your station so that will work. Okay? Any other questions before I move on? Field day. By far the most popular activity, multi-op. There are probably 1,000 multi-op stations on the air in field day every year. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to help local clubs. It ranges all the way from a mostly casual operation all the way to really serious. There aren't that many really serious ones, but a few. And it's a really fabulous way for people to get introduced to the skills of multi-op. And by the way, maybe you kind of got the sense of this already. Building a multi-op builds fabulous life skills that employers are willing to spend a lot of money for, to gain people with those skills, to help you in all kinds of relationships with people outside of your hobby. Fabulous way to develop leadership and planning skills and team building and also your operating skills. But notice operating is only one of those things, and all of these things apply in your family and career life too. And it's lots of fun. So field day, I think, is a great way to start and a great way to help your local club too. So, what about getting invited to do one of these things? Well, let me start with one thing. Don't wait to get invited. If you're interested in being an operator at a multi-op station, the very best way to do that is to volunteer. And that is not to say, hey, Frank, I want to be your ace 20-meter operator next time. That's not the way you start. Best way to start is to volunteer to help prepare for a contest, do some antenna work, basic stuff. Volunteer to operate whatever openings are available in that team. Volunteer. And if your performance is really good, you're going to move up in terms of your role in that team very quickly. And in terms of how rapidly your role in a multi-op team grows, it depends on the skills that you learn, practice, and perfect. And you're probably not going to do that only in that team. You're probably also going to do that at home. So a whole series of skills, and I won't go through these individually, but these are kind of the obvious skills for a contester that you strive to improve as you improve in your hobby. But unlike your role as an individual operator, your role in the team is really important. And there are some highly proficient operators that I have never invited back. And it's never because of this. It's because some people on the team were ready to kill them by the end of the contest. So when you join a competitive team for the first time, you can be assured that all the members of that team have high expectations of you. So it's a pretty good idea to talk to the leader of that team to have an idea, okay, what's expected of me so that I can maybe come back again. You should do your very best to clear the non-contest commitments away during that weekend. Know the schedules and maybe contribute to the meals and so on. Inevitably, the best laid plans go wrong. We put a lot of stress on our antennas and rotators and equipment, and inevitably things go wrong. Don't lose your cool, especially if it affects your band. Contribute to the solution and never be part of the problem. And don't forget why we do this. It's right here. So how do you get invited? You volunteer. Just don't sit back and say, oh, well, somebody will invite me to do this someday. Volunteer to help. Get to know a station owner. Get to know some of the members of the team. Make it clear to them that you're interested in joining. Mention to them what you can do for the team in terms of your skills. Maybe your skills are only in computers. You don't know that much about operating, but you're an expert in some of the operating systems and networks and other things, and you can be, or maintaining computers or whatever. Volunteer to help. And don't wait to be invited. Volunteer. And what do you do after you're invited to join that team? Talk to the leader. Understand the goals. Understand the role you're expected to fill. Especially don't do this. This causes a big problem for the leadership of the team. If you come into the team and you suggest that you have a certain skill level and it turns out not to be true, unfortunately the team leader is going to have to make some adjustments when they discover that. And it usually doesn't work out very well. Definitely work to perfect and improve your skills. Ask what you can do to contribute to the success of the team. It might be that you've got a really good radio. You should normally plan to bring your own headphones. That's the healthiest thing to do. A lot of people have preference for their own keyers. Some people have preferences even with their own keyboards. So some operators bring their own keyboards. They really like their own. They'll bring those. Volunteer to bring some food, soft drinks, and other things. Don't expect to be the primary operator the first time you sit in the chair at that station. You're going to grow into a role. And don't forget that you're the guest in someone's home. And if you expect to come back, treat the host family and their property with great respect. And don't forget to do this. To thank especially the XYL if she's been around for the weekend, and the host, so that you'll be remembered positively when the time comes to form the next team. And above all, this is all about fun. That's why we do this hobby. As an operator, contribute to the enjoyment of the other members of the team. You should be a significant contributor to the success of that team. Learn and improve and have a great time. And if you enjoy it as much as I do, you'll do it again and again and again. I've been doing this for a lot of years. Okay, any questions? How do we work that? Let's all the way back here. That's how we do it. All the answers are right there. There just isn't a simple answer to that. The team that we use in PVRC, there's about 50 of us that come together for a weekend to do this. We've been doing it for a long time. So we don't do that much planning anymore because it tends to be the same people that come back. They know their roles. Everybody does the jobs that they're best at and they're most skilled at, and everything gets done. So we'll all show up at the field day site with the new rules at about 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday to build this 28 transmitter station, and by about 7 p.m. we'll be done. But it doesn't happen by accident. It happens this way. Another question. Right here. Name and call sign, please.
Rob B. for Jamie. I think you hit a nail on the head when you said it's a people management thing. In terms of the performance of the operator, are you evaluating that as the contest is going on, or are you sort of waiting till the end? We have situations in which, for example, we may have a newer contest and some of the older contesters who are more proficient, we'll get on the second set of headphones and go, no, you missed that call. No. Can't you hear that? No, it's for fuck. And before you know it, the new guy gets really flustered and the old guy gets really upset, and the operating gets changed.
Yeah, well, this sounds like a teamwork problem more than anything. And I think both operators there have a problem in that example. So I suspect, and I don't have time to get into a two-way exchange with you, but it sounds like in this case, someone didn't understand the skills of the newer guy, and he was put into an inappropriate role, maybe without someone to help him. And this other guy, the more experienced guy, I suspect he has problems with other members of the team also. So they both need some work.
Where do you put your new people, by the way?
We usually put them with someone else who works with new people well. So, I mean, like any team, you've got people who work with others well, and you have people who don't. So if you've got a new person, you don't put him with one of your difficult people. That's not going to work well. Yes? Depends on the person. What's best depends on many factors. How competitive you want to be. If you want to be really competitive in field day, it's different than if you want everybody to just have a good time. Everybody having a good time, you probably don't want to go more than a couple of hours. But if you want to be really competitive, you want to have your very best operators in the seat for as much time as that person can tolerate. So, and there's a wide range in between. Another question. Yes, over in the corner.
Joe, N7IB. We've got sort of an unusual situation. We've always had 3 or 4 operators, one A operation up North Dakota. We had a really successful junior high school. You got to go to 2A before I go to town.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, so Joe's question is, here's a guy that does these gigantic multi-op stations with people who have mostly gray hair, and he's asking me how I'm going to organize an activity with 7th graders. I think you're asking the wrong guy for that question, quite honestly. Yeah, I think it'd be better to maybe talk to the teacher of some of those people and ask, how do I organize these kids so that I'm not the right person. Yes.
Yeah, Bill, KATE from Albuquerque DX. We faced a similar problem with only a handful having us operators go there. We ran over the allowed number of contacts. People got enthusiastic overnight, made contact after contact, but it is well worth setting up the extra 2 stations in order to get it going, because the bonus points are huge for going. Huge. And so the number of points per QS
That is really good advice.
And we also use, talking about operators and skills, we set up, I bought filters so we can operate 2 sideband stations called tri-band, in addition to the dipoles with filters, so that we had sideband 1 where weird people like I operate, and then the other one we had normal people who don't contest a lot. They operate much less pressure, have some fun doing it, building their skills, so hopefully this year they'll be ready to operate sideband 1.
Okay, folks, we came to the allotted time. Thanks very much for coming. And if you have more questions, you can always ask me during the weekend.